Hello and welcome to a conversation on the Daily Bern. I'm your host, Eric Miller. Today I'm joined by a fiery, fighting progressive from the great state of Massachusetts, running in Massachusetts' 1st District, Mr. Alex Morse. How you doing, sir?
Doing okay, Eric. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for taking some time to chat with me about your campaign. I noticed that early on, I guess you announced maybe last summer, so you've been running a little over a year now, and I wouldn't say we're in the home stretch, but the primary is September 1st. And then the general, which of course you'll get to, is in November. And I want to talk about your opponent, and he's one of the worst corporate Democrats out there, and we'll get into that a little bit. But I just want to ask a little bit about your history for those that maybe haven't heard of you or aren't familiar, right? So
Yeah.
you were elected mayor of Holyoke at the age of 22, where you served, I think, for 4 terms?
I'm in my 4th term now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Right on. So I want to ask, like, how, through that tenure, what are you most proud of? What, in terms of what you've done for Holyoke? I'm sure there's a list, but just give me 2 or 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be a year on July 22nd that we launched this campaign. And it's definitely the final stretch. We have a little over 6 weeks to go until September 1st and have a lot of exciting momentum here on the ground and want to bring it home these next few weeks. And so appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and folks out there that have an interest in sending more progressives to Washington, to Congress. Yeah, I mean, I grew up here in Holyoke. It's a city of just over 40,000 people right outside Springfield in Western Mass. Was once the paper capital of the country, and forces of capitalism, globalization, the city fell on hard times. And I grew up in the backdrop of a dead downtown, white flight out of the city, poor performing public schools, and we just had the same people in office year after year, decade after decade. And my parents grew up here in Holyoke, in public housing, in poverty, both raised by single mothers. My mom got pregnant when she was just 17 with my oldest brother, and dropped out of high school, and neither her nor my father had the opportunity to go into college. My dad still works at the same meatpacking company that he started working at 35 years ago. And, my mom, when she was alive, had a daycare in my childhood home. And, they just worked tirelessly to make sure my brothers and I had the opportunities they didn't have. I went through our public schools, became the first in my family to go to college when I went to Brown University, and I came back. Unlike so many of my classmates, I was so connected to my family and my hometown, and decided to run for mayor. I was 21 years old, openly gay, running against the 68-year-old Democratic incumbent. And people said then what they say now: you don't run against another Democrat, you don't run against an incumbent. And we won that election. And over the last 9 years, our graduation rate was only 49% when I took office in high school, and now it's 75%, or close to 75%. We've largely transitioned the city off of fossil fuels. We're about 92% carbon neutral today. We closed the state's last coal plant and replaced it with the state's largest solar facility and a battery storage system. I was one of the first mayors in 2014 to declare our city a sanctuary city to protect undocumented immigrants in our community. And I was the first and only mayor in 2016 to support the recreational legalization of cannabis, marijuana in Massachusetts, as a means to correct for prohibition and the war on drugs and the harm inflicted on communities of color that still exists in our community today. And so when I think about issues of drug policy reform, racial justice, immigrant justice, even climate change, I mean, those are issues that don't stop at our borders. And we're represented by someone, Congressman Neal, that is completely out of touch on all of those issues.
Yeah. Let's get into his record. So he is, in 2019, I don't know 2020, but he is the biggest recipient of corporate PACs, and it impacts his votes in a very real way. And I want to just delineate a few of those. Can you talk about that maybe in general, like his, you reject corporate PACs, he does not, spell that out for people.
This is a fundamental question of what kind of representation people want in Washington. I mean, Congressman Neal, like you said, he's the #1 recipient of corporate PAC money in Congress, not just among Democrats, but even among Republicans. I mean, he's neck and neck with McCarthy, a Republican in the House. And from Wall Street, from fossil fuel companies, from big pharma, the healthcare industry. I mean, one great example is, there was a bill that would have ended and curbed surprise medical bills for patients and consumers. I mean, 10,000 Americans a day get a surprise medical bill. All of a sudden, Blackstone, a private equity group, never before donated to Congressman Neal, donated $55,000. Neal went on to single-handedly kill the bill that was approaching the finish line to pretty much reward his corporate donors, to reward Blackstone. And so, I mean, to put private corporations and private equity groups and big pharma before the people that sent you to Washington in the first place, I mean, why want to be in Congress if you're not going to use your power to help the people here? And on every issue, I mean, the money he takes from the fossil fuel industry, he's literally the only Democrat in the Massachusetts congressional delegation that refuses to sign on to the Green New Deal. At the very time, he's so proud that he was the chief negotiator in the House for NAFTA 2.0, the USMCA trade agreement that every major climate group came out against. And it's just, I mean, healthcare, Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, reproductive justice. I mean, you name the issue, we can find a corporate donor that is influencing them more than the challenges and struggles of people that live here.
Yeah. Yeah, that Blackstone one is, I mean, they're all egregious, but that one, they didn't donate in previous cycles. They literally just got on board just for sort of an acute, that bill, and then, you know, who knows where it goes. But, and it was, you know, if I remember correctly, there was an article in Intercept, and I think it was only like 68 grand or something. It's not an exorbitant amount of money that, you know, that they used to basically buy his vote on that, which is, you know, terribly offensive. You know, you hit on a few of those, and I want to just highlight them because they are terrible, right? So he's taken 670,000 since 2007, and it's no coincidence that he's the chair on the Ways and Means, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, one of the, you know, this might seem like a kind of a minor thing, but he basically lobbied or forbade the term Medicare for all during the Medicare for all hearing in the Ways and Means Committee. That is, I mean, that's offensive, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, no, and this is, I mean, healthcare is the number one issue that I hear about in the district. And I mean, overall, when you look at outcomes in the district and the disparities in the district, and when you talk to real people about their struggles, their challenges, I mean, you would just never know we have one of the most powerful members of Congress representing us when you talk to real people. And even in the midst of this pandemic, we have inpatient psychiatric hospitals closing, birthing centers closing in communities of color, the Berkshires and in rural parts of our district. The hospital infrastructure is already non-existent. Transportation infrastructure, the opioid epidemic that has impacted my family quite personally. And in a pandemic where over 40 million Americans have lost their job and millions of Americans have now lost their employer-based health insurance, our Congressman Neal is literally using his power to subsidize the private healthcare industry, extend COBRA benefits, which are expensive and inaccessible to people here and around the country. And last year, for the first time in history, the House had hearings on Medicare for all. And Congressman Neal literally barred members of the committee from even uttering the phrase Medicare for all during that hearing. And so, again, just another instance of him using his power. And I'm asked here on the ground in the district, why would you challenge the chair of the Ways and Means Committee? Doesn't that mean something for us? And no, because over the last 19 months as chair of the Ways and Means Committee, he hasn't used his power to hold Trump accountable. He slow-walked the request from the tax returns that pretty much assured we're not going to see them before the November election. He's not using his power to fight for a single-payer healthcare system. He's not using his power for anything that would benefit people here. Yeah,
can you talk about, sorry to interrupt, but can you talk about that slow walking the tax return request? I don't think a lot of people are aware of what went down there. Can you share that story?
It's ludicrous. Really, I mean, the Democrats worked so hard in 2018. I mean, people up and down the ballot to take back the House with the hope that we have a Democratic Congress that actually holds the most dangerous, corrupt president in our lifetime accountable and actually conduct oversight. And it's actually Congressman Engel and Congressman Neal, the two chairs of committees, that got an F for not having a single oversight hearing on the Trump administration since the Democrats took back the House. And so we take back the House in November 2018. It wasn't until summer of 2019 that Congressman Neal actually filed a lawsuit to get the tax returns. And it took even months before that, before he, quote, wrote a strongly worded letter to the president asking for the tax returns. It took organizing thousands of people here in the district, millions of people around the country, to demand that Congressman Neal actually request the tax returns. And on top of the federal returns, New York state lawmakers worked for years to make the New York state returns available to Congressman Neal. Like literally, Congressman Neal, as the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, is the one person in Washington that has access to them. And he's the one person in Washington that still today has not requested them. There was a 2-week window. I mean, Congressman Neal literally did a huge favor for President Trump. He gave him an additional couple of weeks before he even asked for them, and he didn't. And it gave Trump enough time to file a lawsuit against New York to prevent the release of them. And meanwhile, Congressman Neal is negotiating with Steve Mnuchin and President Trump a trade agreement and talking about infrastructure. And so he made a very intentional decision to work with the president rather than hold him accountable.
Yeah. And, that story was out there in progressive media, but, you wouldn't see that for all the hoopla that you would see on the Rachel Maddows and things like that. That story was not told. Why is that? Can you share your perspective on that?
Why the story wasn't told in mainstream media?
Yeah. Why? How did he get away with it, basically?
Yeah, a great question. I think when it comes to party leadership, there seems to be this sense of compromise, and and it comes to compromising our values. And I think the Democratic Party needs to grow a backbone and use the leverage. I mean, you have the majority in the House of Representatives. No bill goes to the president without your support. And for too long, Democrats like Congressman Neal allow Republicans to set the parameters for any negotiation or conversation. And even on the CARES Act, I mean, to give the president a $500 billion slush fund to corporations while small business owners, entrepreneurs of color in particular, are shut out of the Paycheck Protection Program and of getting federal aid, of hospitals closing again in the midst of the pandemic. I mean, they're just not using their power or their leverage to deliver for the American people right now. And I think it's just unacceptable that Congressman Neal was allowed to slow up. And believe me, there were Democrats in Congress that are not happy with Congressman Neal for the way he handled this.
Yeah. I wonder, when you talk to constituents, are they aware of this? How much awareness is there of his record when you talk to people?
There's awareness. I mean, he has been in Congress for over 30 years. I mean, he took office a few weeks before I was born in January of 1989. And it's just a completely different time than it was 30 years ago, right? We have a completely different set of challenges that require a completely different set of solutions. And Congressman Neal is just completely incapable of grasping the magnitude of the solutions we need to those challenges. And people know that he has power. And they're, particularly right now in these uncertain times, people are looking for visible, vocal leadership. And the tax returns is just one example of his MO throughout his career, that he is not a fighter for this district. He is not a vocal advocate. He doesn't do town halls. And so while people are in fear and scared about their future, people are struggling to pay their bills, pay their rent or mortgage, our congressman is nowhere to be found. And when he does show up, it's spending time with corporate CEOs and hospital executives. It's not actually talking to real people that are being left behind by a government that isn't looking out for them. So people know it, and people are struggling, and people are tired of the status quo that has just left too many communities behind.
Right on. I do want to take a look at your district, just so people know where we're talking about. It's Massachusetts 1st, Holyoke, where you're the mayor. We also have Springfield, North Adams, Pittsfield. Counties are Berkshire, Franklin, Hampshire, Worcester. I can't say that in true. I can't say it in true Massachusetts accent, but I like to share that because gerrymandering is deliberately ridiculous. So not everyone knows where they are. So this is Massachusetts 1, and it is a D+12 district. So it is a safe district. So oftentimes you get people thinking they're voting more cautiously for a moderate, right? But that's not the case here. Like you can easily win this seat if you can get through the primary. Yeah, I mean,
there's no Republican in the general. So this will be decided on September 1st, 6.5 weeks from today. And so this is really about replacing the Democratic Party's most conservative corporate Democrat with a Democrat actually in touch that wants to fight for people, not for corporations and special interests. And I would argue it's not those members of Congress that have been there for 30 years that are wielding the most power right now. It's even those members of Congress that have been there less than one term that are bringing more attention to their district, that are setting the agenda for our party and for our country. And it would be an honor for me to be there and to join with them and be a voice for my district.
You're here. And let's talk about what you're fighting for rather than what you're fighting against, right? So we touched on these a little bit, Medicare for all, Green New Deal, economic justice, local investment, racial social justice, canceling student debt, free public college, and the corruption. Obviously, we talked about that a lot. Puerto Rico, I've used the word statehood. I should have used like independence or autonomy, and just getting money out of politics, right? So any of those that you want to particularly highlight?
Yeah, I would say for progressives around the country, this is the most important Democratic primary, because if we care about Medicare for all, if we care about the Green New Deal and a bold response to climate change, repealing the Hyde Amendment, a wealth tax, drug policy reform, the MORE Act, which would impact the cannabis industry nationally, national legalization, and start with national expungement. I mean, Congressman Neal is sitting on these important pieces of legislation and refusing to do hearings on them. And so that's just incredibly important. And when it comes to Puerto Rico, I mean, we are a community here in Holyoke that's 50% Latino, mostly of Puerto Rican descent. And I'm not a supporter of statehood. I'm a supporter of self-determination, that the people of the island of Puerto Rico, of Puerto Rican descent, should make that decision. But we need to make sure that we repeal la junta and actually empower the people of Puerto Rico to no longer feel like a colony of the United States.
Right on. Yeah, so just to clarify, that word statehood was mine when I made the graphic. So thanks for clearing that. I want to share your website because it is fantastic.
Thank you.
So we have, like, a lot of candidates have issues, right? But you have on your website, and hopefully you can see this, you have everything boldly spelled out and in bullet point, very succinct, right? No surprise billing, no copays, right? Farmers Forward, climate change, right? Everything in here is literally laid out. It is granular, and it is there's no ambiguity, which so often is not the case on a politician or candidate's website, right? Yeah, and the trans military ban, ban conversion therapy. You're getting into the weeds. ADA childcare, right? Money out of politics, overturn Citizens United, end cash bail, protect dreamers, cancel Trump's racist Muslim ban. There's all, here's the Puerto Rican bits, self-determination. Yeah, so just kudos. Anyone watching this, please check out Alex's website, because it is very comprehensive, and he's a legit progressive on all of these policies. So and obviously donate while you're there. Of course,
top right corner.
Right. What is the state of the campaign? So you're in the home stretch. Like, what? I mean, is there any chance of a debate? I didn't look if you had any chance of getting him on a debate.
Yeah, so it looks like we have at least 2 in August, and we're going to be pushing for as many as possible. We think the residents of this district deserve an opportunity to hear Congressman Neal and I debate the issues and our visions for the future. And so really excited about that opportunity. And we've just been organizing as much as we can. I mean, even just over the last several weeks, we've made over 300,000 phone calls to voters throughout the district talking about what we're fighting for. In the midst of the pandemic, we made thousands of wellness calls connecting people to resources and mutual aid. And so for folks that don't live in the district, I mean, yeah, you can help out by chipping in and making sure we have the resources to finish strong. But also, you can phone bank with us remotely. You can organize. We're starting text banking soon. And so this is how we're going to win this election, by reaching out to thousands of people that aren't traditionally contacted by a campaign like ours. And so we do have a pathway to victory. We're on our way to winning on September 1st. Folks from all 50 states have chipped into our campaign. We're close to raising $1 million, which is an incredible feat for our campaign. And we just announced our fundraising numbers for the last quarter a couple of days ago. We raised $322,000 the last 3 months. Congressman Neal raised $336,000 the last 3 months. The difference is 95% of our contributions were under $200. 100% are from people, and over 80% of Congressman Neal's donations are from corporate PACs, not from people. And here in the district, we have 25 times the amount of donors that actually live here. And so we're building a people-powered movement in every corner of the 87 cities and towns. And again, we're going to send a representative to Congress that is there for this district and for the people who live here, not for DC lobbyists and corporations.
Right on. Yeah, and I always tell people, like, if you felt the gut punch of Bernie and Charles Booker, like, there are still winnable races, and Alex is one of those. So, all hands on deck. Let's get him across the finish line. Is there any we talked about these sort of broad issues, Medicare for all, Green New Deal, things like that. Is there anything specific to your district that might be a particular pain point that you want to highlight policy-wise?
Yeah, I would say a few different things. One thing that's been important to me, as I highlighted before, is the disproportionate impact of the war on drugs on communities of color, particularly here in Holyoke and in Springfield. And we have so much more work to do on that issue across the country. And there's so few drug policy reform advocates and champions in Congress. And that's certainly something that I will be fighting for. I would also say the digital divide is, we're in a district, again, and I said before that you would never know we have one of the most powerful members of Congress here. But we still have dozens of cities and towns without basic access to broadband internet in our community, which is impacting people's livelihood and way of life, the jobs that they choose. So that's important for this district. And when the pandemic hit too, we had thousands of kids here in our public schools that just didn't have internet or devices at home. And so this is an issue that I imagine is affecting people all across the country, and it's an important one that we have to address. And I think we need to make sure we invest in, internet and cable being a public utility, and making it available to folks in our community. I would also say Springfield, the biggest city in the district, is the asthma capital of the entire country. It's a majority minority city, and we as a government, as a country, need to talk about where we relegate people to go to school, to live, the air that they breathe, the water that they drink. The outcomes we see today are a result of a policy failure. And we need to make sure we're intentional about building policy that helps people nationally, but is specific to the challenges here in the district. And the fact that we have a member of Congress that doesn't even do town halls or speak to everyday constituents, it's no surprise that he's not aware of the struggles that people are experiencing. And so those are just a few of the issues. Obviously, Medicare for all is huge for a district like ours, where hospital infrastructure is getting smaller and smaller by the day. As I mentioned before, hospitals closing. I mean, my own brother, my oldest brother, passed away from a heroin overdose just a few months ago in February, and he struggled with heroin addiction for his entire adult life, 20 years. And even I, as a mayor of a major city here in the district, struggled to find a detox bed and a treatment program for him. And if I'm having challenges navigating our healthcare system, or being told when we show up at a treatment program that, hey, sorry, we don't take your insurance, I mean, it's time that this country have health insurance that actually guarantees it as a human right and covers vision and dental and substance abuse treatment and mental health treatment. I mean, it's so cruel that we as a government have allowed people to get sick and then have allowed private companies to profit off of that sickness. Yeah,
here. I'm sorry to hear about your brother. I didn't know that. You mentioned the asthma thing. I'm curious, what's the cause of that? Is there industry? Is it environmental? And can you tie that to the Green New Deal?
Absolutely, because the Green New Deal is about a jobs guarantee and the creation of thousands of good-paying union jobs here in Western Mass. It's also about the when you think about the Green New Deal for public housing and the quality of public housing that people are living in this community, the impact of manufacturing and not many restrictions over the years on sort of adding to the carbon footprint and pollution for so long. We're also in a valley here in the district. And on top of that, Congressman Neal, in the most recent infrastructure bill that was drafted by the House, actually includes subsidies for a biomass facility to be constructed in Springfield. Again, the city that is the asthma capital of our entire country. And so I'm opposed to the biomass facility and the impact really as an EJ issue, an environmental justice issue, in our community, and its frontline communities of color, low-income folks that are most impacted by climate change. And I would also mention climate-related migration. Back in 2017, we had thousands of Puerto Rican migrants from the island of Puerto Rico come to Western Mass after Hurricane Maria. And we welcomed folks. We opened up a welcome center. We had a daily orientation. Thousands of folks walked through our welcome center at Enlace de Familias on Main Street. And our communities need to become more climate resilient and prepare for inland migration from coastal areas of this country and from places all around the world. And we're just not prepared for that as a nation. And so to have a member of Congress, again, that refuses to embrace and sign on to the Green New Deal is just a complete abdication of responsibility.
Yeah, hear, hear. So again, the election is September 1st. Alex Morse for Congress.com is your website. Please sign up to Phone Bank, donate, hit the big orange button in the top right on his website, and join up to send some texts and things like that. Alex, I would love to have you back on, at least once, maybe twice before September 1st to help get the word out. I think this is this is a very winnable seat, and this would be like an AOC style impact. We need to get more public servants into serving the public, and what an honor, like you said, it would be to have someone like you serving. So I thank you for running, and thank you for your service in Holyoke, and I hope to speak with you soon. Anything that we didn't hit on that you want to touch on, or a closing comment or anything?
No, I think we're good. I just really appreciate the opportunity again, and appreciate those folks who are tuning in and watching this, and just encourage folks to check out alexmorseforcongress.com and chip in a few bucks, or sign up to volunteer and join us wherever you are. It'll make a difference and help us get to the finish line on September 1st.
Right on. Cool. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, thank you.